Hi, you are watching SightsIn Plus, and this is Romesh Srivastava. Please to subscribe the channel for the HR news, for HR updates, and conversation with the top-notch CHROs, thought leaders, and business heads. Today, we are going to discuss workplace romances, workplace relationships, you can call it. We will try to dive deep three major points. What should be the HR policy for this? Should organizations allow the workplace relationships or not? Second, what is the disclosure and how important is disclosure for the employees? And what is the right time for the disclosure? That is also important. Third, what are the legal aspects related to the workplace relationships? To discuss in detail, we have three esteemed panelists. Let me welcome Mr. Sahil Nayar, renowned HR thought leader, Mr. Sriram Sadras, founder of Our Happiness Matters, and Noopur Singhal, she is PoSH Expert and founder of SSHAKTAM Minds. Sahil, if I come to you first, so how do you see the perception of workplace romance is evolved with the time, and how do you see what are the current trends?
Sure, Romesh. I think over the years, we have really come a long way from the time when people used to say that this is not all right to the time where people said, okay, if it's happening, it's natural, it is understandable, but please let us know so that we can be careful that there's no conflict of interest to forward-looking organizations that are actually encouraging it and offering dating allowances. So I think there are different people on different ends of the spectrum. And I think each one to his own, as long as there is respect, as long as there is dignity, and as long as there is no bias that creeps in because of a personal relationship impacting the professional relationship, I think that's the way to go. You asked me to be short, so I'm keeping it short.
So, Sahil, also I did a little survey on the this WhatsApp channel, and I wrote two questions. Is it increasing in last 4 5 years? Because we have seen the hybrid working models and the remote working. So responses are mixed. Around 50% people are saying, yeah, it is increasing, and 50% are saying it's a decreasing. So it's difficult to differentiate at what's the line in between. And the second, I put the question that should the organizations allow the workplace relationships? Most of the people, they are saying no, it should not be allowed. You can say the ratio is around 60-40. 60% people are saying it should not be allowed, and 40% people are in agreement of this. Uh, Sriram, how do you see what maybe the pros and cons, keeping in view also these two responses?
See, how many of us have friends who we know met at work and got married? Everybody will have, right? So you can sit and say that it's right or wrong, but it's a fact that, we don't know how relationships evolve. There is a way people meet, and then, so it could go either way, right? So we have to limit ourselves to not become a moral police over here, but it's a very sensitive and mature topic. It's because there are several nuances which are going to be very difficult to define with respect to very exact rules. So we need to keep the intent in mind. The intent is that we need the professional environment to remain professional. We don't want a conflict of interest where people in a relationship can influence each other's career or, in an unfair manner. And we don't want behaviors which cause disturbances to others. Largely, that is all the intent is over here. It's nothing beyond that. Okay. So as long as we, as organizations, have to have the maturity to understand that you are not going to be able to stop it. It's a human tendency to, you can say whatever you want. If there is attraction, there is attraction, right? But if we can handle it in a nuanced and mature way, with awareness, with conveying the interest of people, then I think, we can work out something where even if there is no specific rule, if the intent is very clear and people understand what you're trying to do, and then we say that, but we respect your privacy, you respect the interests of the organization, and we work on it on a mature way. That's what, have I've seen work practically from a thing. I'll pause there. Yeah.
So I think you have also outlined the intent of the organization and the HR policies when we talk about the workplace relationships. But before we go deeper into the HR policy, also I'd like to know, Nupur, your perspective that how do you see the law comes here? How do you see the legality comes here when we talk about the workplace relationships?
So, the law does not bar that any workplace relationships. Law does not give any moral policing, right? So, as rightly said by Sriram, that we are human beings. People actually spend 60 to 70 to 80% time on workplaces, and they are bound to develop feelings for each other, or they are bound to develop a relationship with each other. But till the time everything is going okay, there are no conflict of interest, there is no like there is consensual relationships, no power imbalances, everything is good. Law does not interfere at all. Law comes only when there are complaints, that complaints of harassment, complaint of violence, or complaint of like PoSH we have in place. So those type of things, law only will come in that place. Otherwise, law does not define or govern any workplace relationship at all. It
Yeah,
is okay
definitely,
with. Yeah,
there is no law that is not impacting the love between two people. But yeah, being a boss expert, what kind of the cases that you see because of the work relationship now? What is the situation? Maybe after the breakup, maybe so many things are there. What is the
right.
that
So
thin fine line between these workplace relationship, sexual harassment, and so what is that thin fine line? I want to know.
So the cases which we heard actually actually after the breakup there, and if there is a power dynamics between that, one person is the senior and the other is junior, and they are working together, then there are going to get cases that I was used. I was asked to do this. I never intended to go into this relationship, and therefore I have been harassed. So these type of cases do come to us under POSH, and we have to see, and that is why we actually guide the workplace to have the policy related. Only that if people are disclosing, there are companies who have these workplace relationship policies, and where the people are required, employees are required to do. Inform the companies that they are in relationship, and the purpose is not to the for the moral policing, but that these imbalances should not come into place. If the two people are working in the same team and they develop the feelings, they should be actually then put in the different teams, so that it is fair to them as well as to the other employees who are working there. They should also not complain that she or he is getting benefit because they are in relationship. Right. So in that case, but in POSH, yes, we do get cases like this, that I was used. I was not intended to. Even if one was getting promotion, one was getting benefit. After when the relationship over, they said the other person said she got benefit from that, and the person said that the other employee said, the complainant said, but I was not interested. If I would not have joined that relationship, I would not have got this benefit, even though I was like equally I am talented. So there are many
Right,
nuances after this issues when come. But
right.
then again, it is the actually putting the onus on the person who is at the higher level, because they should be aware of it. The
Right.
data.
Yeah, I'll come
That is
back
the
to you on
point.
this because the POS is also not gender neutral law. So there are also other committees, ethical committees, and some many provisions are there in organizations. We will discuss also on this. So
Yes.
now, before jumping into another legal aspect, Sahil, how do you see that? What should be the HR policy when we look at the workplace relationships in current scenario, especially when we're talking that the more of the Gen Zs, they're expecting that organizations that should be open for the acceptance of workplace relationships.
I think, Romesh, there are two parts to this, right? Part number one is if you're going to be archaic in thought process and think that you can sit and command and control, I don't think that's going to happen, right? But at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, if you're just going to leave it absolutely let loose, you're going to have havoc, right? You're going to have people who are going to misuse environment. You're going to have people who are going to play advantage, so on and so forth. So I think the art is about the balance. It's about the balance of giving the flexibility at the same time ensuring that this opportunity, because a platform is being provided or a space is being provided, which actually is for work. But of course, we also take cognizance that people will take lunch breaks, people will go for coffee breaks, people will go for sutta breaks. You will have an after party, you will have off-site, and therefore in places that these where you're not working the entire day, but you're networking or you're bonding over extracurricular activities, I think it's extremely important that the code of conduct is very clear. I think it's very, very important for new joiners, employees, especially new joiners, to have a training of what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, and also a refresher for existing employees so that there's a regular check-in and reinforcement of the fact that what are the boundaries within which one needs to operate. And very clearly, if at all there is a change in relationship, I think disclosure is very important, because then the organization can proactively take steps to ensure that one, there is no bias, and two, even if there is a perceived bias, that gets addressed appropriately, because many a times you realize that nothing may have really happened, but the conversations in the corridors, at the water cooler, down the aisle, generally just create for unnecessary gossip that can be easily avoided. So those are some of my thoughts.
And Sriram, how do you
Ramesh, I want
see
to
that?
add, yeah.
Yeah. So Sriram, what is so as far as I think everyone is agreed that disclosure is important. There's also a survey by the SHRM, if you see, that is for the US, not for the India, that 73%, 80% people, they are not disclosing. How important is disclosure? What should be the HR policy for the disclosure? If that is not disclosed, and if anything comes in picture later on, then what the rules may be there? And we will also, if you can also explore that, what is the role of ethics committee or code of conduct into this? How do you see, Sriram?
See, first, I think there are different scenarios. One scenario is between a person of influence or power with a subordinate. Now, disclosure is very important over there because there are consequences for everybody. That is, it certainly has a conflict of interest. There's no doubt over there that somebody who who's a leader, a senior person, or a direct manager, or a indirect manager, etc. All of those are persons of influence. If they are having a relationship with a junior person who they can directly or indirectly influence, now that has to have disclosure because it has consequences, and the rule has to be clear in those cases. And the solution is very simple: that you move them out of their circle of influence, and then whatever happens is a separate thing. So that's one scenario. A disclosure has to be mandated. Now, the issue there is at what stage, right? So, and that is where the tricky part is in terms of saying, okay, we are kind of seeing each other, but we're not serious, or we are serious, we're not into a physical relationship. When you're in a physical relationship, then again, is it a casual? Is it more? So there are many nuances here, which is where I think the maturity of the thing should be. But in any case, I think disclosure at some level has to be a little more stringent and mandated when it is a superior role. Then you have a role between peers who are in the same team, which is perhaps a little less, kind of thing. But there, the issue is more in terms of how that affects the team dynamics, how, it could affect the work dynamics as well, saying that, okay, so there is certainly some impact over there, but perhaps a little less. And again, disclosure is probably needed in those scenarios as well, but not as critical as the first scenario. Then, of course, there's a third scenario where two people in the same organization but disconnected teams are having a relationship. And perhaps that doesn't require disclosure unless it has some material basis for them to actually disclose. So I think we have to look at it in this way and then craft our policies so that always start with the intent of what you're trying to do. And with that intent, you kind of define these scenarios and then allow people to be a little bit mature to kind of come back and see. And when you come or get to know, even if it's a perception. I think one of the important things is managers need to be trained to have sensitive and conversations around this, not to avoid it. Because many times what happens is that sometimes you get a sense or you get a, a murmur or a rumor. And if you are the manager who's dealing with it, the first thing you would do is to kind of have a conversation which is not, you know, in a way derogatory, but it's more about saying that, hey, we are hearing something like this. I wanted to bring it up and talk about it. And that itself will bring it. If somebody is not disclosing the 80% that you're talking about, is also, it's not that the system completely will not know, right? Somewhere somebody will know if there are two people who are kind of close to each other. But then, how does the system deal with it? Most managers actually shirk away with it because they're either they don't want to deal with it, or they don't know what to do, or they are afraid of the consequences, saying that, okay, if I bring it up, something can happen, right? So those are the nuances. We keep those nuances in mind and then craft the rules around disclosure. And in most times, I think if you keep the solution also transparent, saying all we are trying to do is promote ethical and behavior and fairness, there is no other intent for you to kind of disclose. And the other important element of this is also confidentiality of HR or the people involved. Because sometimes people don't tell you, because if they know that news will not stay with you and there is the element of, we are not sure yet, but we are in a relationship, then should I tell you or not? But if I tell you, you will go and tell another 10 people. That is a dangerous thing. Then I would rather not tell you, right? So again, that element also it needs to be kind of looked at when we say that when people tell somebody, it has to have the required amount of confidentiality, and that guarantee should be given by the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Disclosure to HR, then the privacy. Yeah, absolutely. That matters. Nupur, as a PoSH expert, how do you see the disclosure when any case comes to you? Maybe how do you see the disclosure is the importance of disclosure? At what stage the employee has disclosed to the HR? Is it documented or not? How it impact when it converts into the legal case?
So, disclosure has a little effect when the PoSH Act comes into place, because consent can be stopped at any time. Even if the parties were in consensual relationship and they were actually going on. But when we got the cases, it's generally that my consent was stopped at this day. I had stopped this relationship. I had asked the other person that I am not interested. And thereafter, so after that, disclosure does not have any effect on the PoSH. Because once it is over, then it is over. From there back, the case is there is no relationship going on. So that is why when we see PoSH from the legal angle, it is only then it's a one-sided affair. If it is breakup from one side, then it is a one-sided affair. It will termed as a harassment only. So one side pursuit, one side be relationship. The other party may not be able to adjust with this breakup or anything, but we will consider only as a harassment. So
Both the
disclosing that,
disclosures are
yes, we
important.
had
Both the disclosures are important when you come into the relationship, and suppose if that relationship ends, so both the disclosures are important to HR.
the disclosure to HR act, that's what I'm saying, that they are not much important when it comes to law. See, disclosing or not disclosing, these are HR policies. We can talk about the policies, but coming to law, disclosure may have little effect that when we are going through the evidences and the questionnaires, like when this happened, when that happened, when going by the timeline, that okay, this was a period when they were actually, people knew about it, they were okay, and everyone knew about it. But otherwise, it is not much of importance disclosing. For the company side, if we say yes, it is important because the culture has to be maintained, respect and everything has to be maintained. But coming to the legal, when it comes to legal, then it does not have that effect. It will
Right.
not take,
So
it
for
will be
the
very little consideration.
So for the legal purpose, there is not much, impact of whether it is disclosed or not disclosed.
Yes, disclosed or not disclosed, because even if they were in the relationship, they have not disclosed it. It is actually on the committee to come and to ask and get to know that whether there was a relationship or not, and whether it was over or not. Because when the party says that it is over, then it is over for us, because that is how the law is.
So, Sahil, as I was talking about that, this is also not a general neutral law PoSH. So that's why we're having the ethics committee, we are having the code of conduct. How these two, ethical committees, I can say code of conduct, how they can work on this, how they can protect to have the healthy atmosphere in organizations.
I think, Romesh, as I started off, right, basic amount of respect and dignity is very, very important. If that is not within the room, then to my mind, everything is outside the window. Because the moment you lose respect for an individual, a fellow colleague, an individual, forget even colleague in the workspace, right? Or the dignity is missing, then automatically natural behavior becomes unnatural. And then you start justifying that unnatural behavior to say, oh, the circumstance was like that, or the moment was that, or I wasn't telling you, I was telling the situation, so on and so forth. But I want to take a step back in this conversation. And we're having a very, very sensitive conversation here. And I think it's important. When Noopur says that the law doesn't mandate you to disclose, and if I go back to Sriram's point, if I'm going to have an environment or a culture that's going to misuse my disclosure, there is no incentive for anyone to disclose. Let's take a pause and let's think of that. What is the incentive for someone to disclose when I have the fear that this might be manipulated, this might be used against me? I'm not mandated by law. And third and most important aspect very clearly is to say that I don't have a power of influence. It may be a peer, it may be someone from a different department, like the way Sriram called out. And therefore, the question that comes down is, while you may start off with intent, what gets measured in law is action. What actually gets measured, and Noopur is nodding her head, and I can see that, which is thanks Noopur for agreeing. The law doesn't look at intent. The law is going to look at how it was interpreted. The law is going to look at how I felt about it and whether I offered consent at every step. And then there's the angle of PoSH, and as you rightly said, code of conduct or ethics committee, to really see that today, what if there are two people from the same gender? Two people from the same gender. And therefore, one person actually feels let down. And that is a different complexity altogether, which one needs to deal with. So it's not as easy as this conversation, Romesh.
So here just I want to add, Sahil, as you said, the two people from the same gender. So under PoSH, a complaint can be filed against women as well. So there will be complexities, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, I was referring to Noopur, like say two males are in a relationship or two females are in a relationship, again, as you rightly mentioned, right?
So, Sriram, as Sahil, you have also highlighted very important point that what is the incentive of this disclosure? Why should I disclose if law doesn't mandate? So this is also I think, a logical point. Sriram, how do you see the impact on culture? Does it boost the engagement among the employees? Transparent culture, people are disclosing if they are having the work relationship. How do you see the impact on culture part?
We want employees to be who they are. That's the way in which we get maximum engagement, where, if they don't have to, kind of hide stuff, they don't have to behave differently when they are there. If we can get them to be who they are, right? That is the best case scenario for the organization, where you are treating them as adults, you're treating them as professionals, and we expect them to reciprocate. That's the basis where, that's a mature relationship, saying that we will treat you as an adult, and there are certain, things that you have to follow as a professional. Respect that, and we will respect your privacy. We will give you your, kind of freedom to do what you want in your time and space, right? Then that is a good kind of thing. But this is a dynamic thing, right? You are having kids who are coming, who come from college, who have a rush of blood, so they have their own priorities. And as kind of HR and things are there, we also have our own way of dealing with certain things. So it's a dynamic thing where I think the only way to deal with this is to educate people, to bring in awareness, to have conversations, and when things go wrong, to revisit and see, okay, what caused it? What was the thing? Was it a question of awareness? Was it a question of how we dealt with it? Was it a thing where people didn't understand what professionalism meant? Where is it? And try and deal with it through continuous awareness, dialogue, conversations, where you bring up these things in more open, transparent ways, where you say, hey, we had a situation like this, and this is what happened, and this is how we dealt with it. And when, if you are in that position, this is how we want you to kind of deal with this. So if we can bring in that level of transparency, most times organizations are hiding stuff, right? Hush, hush, we won't talk about it. This is all closed doors. That doesn't work. The new generation is far more aware. They're connected. They know everything that's going on. Okay. So there's no point in thing. The issue is with the mindset of the more older people, because we come from a different, kind of thing. So the more transparent we can be, and more mature and professional that we can be, and bring these up for discussion, not so much as a right and wrong, but as a situation, saying, hey, this is what happened. This is how we are dealing with it. If you have ideas, come up, you have thing, then it opens it up, right? That's really a flourishing culture.
Yeah, you have highlighted really very important points. Noopur, sometime in PoSH, also it becomes difficult to differentiate the consensual relationships, and might be the forcefully if that has been done. So how to see if there's any case? So how do you differentiate?
Talking about the cases as every time when we're talking about the PoSH, but actually, see, the Act full name is Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal. So we are talking only about the redressal part here, but I agree with Sriram. What we are talking here is actually the company's responsibility on prevention and prohibition. So what is the all we are talking that about the culture building, about the awareness, about the dialogues? These are all part of PoSH in relation in building the culture. So that is all are into the part of PoSH, and that is what the company's responsibility is. And if the company or the organization is doing everything which is there, then yes, that will help if and when the redressal part comes. Because if the organization is proactive in prevention of this by the various dialogues, trainings, awareness sessions, coffee table discussions, and everything, then I'm sure very few cases will come in this line, that these blurred line of workplace harassment or the consensual relationship, because that is how the culture is built. See, the PoSH is not per se the legal court law. It is the law which is applicable within the organization, where the culture has to be built within the organization. The law governs inside the organization, and that is why all this will come into play. And when the organization is doing so much awareness, then I'm sure those the blurred lines and everything, very few cases will come. But if there are cases, yes, that is now the part of internal committee comes in, how to find it out, and therefore the trainings are very important in this. And these are mandatory trainings that they has to be given, because these internal committee members are not lawyers, they are not legal persons, they are nothing, but how to ask questions, how to gauge the situation, that what is correct, what is wrong, how to come bring out the facts, because it's a fact finding committee. It is not court or anything, though there are few powers of court, but it is a fact-finding committee. So these things, like you said, policy and everything might add something, but nothing much more. It's a fact-finding committee, and those are the trainings which has to be given to the committee. by some
Absolutely,
expert.
you have highlighted very important point. Training must be given, and prevention, that is the core focus of this PoSH Act. Prevention is very important. We have only a couple of minutes left, so any concluding remark, Sriram and Sahil from your side?
As I mentioned, I think it's important for it to be treated with sensitivity, with nuanced, kind of thing, where we have more open conversations, open it up for discussion. That is when you'll be able to define those boundaries better. You sitting in a policy and if trying to define it is not the right way. You be clear about the intent and then have conversations through those. You kind of make people aware, and then when everybody is aware and they are kind of in a way bought into it, then they are under pressure to adhere to a higher level of thing. That's what we want. That will automatically increase the disclosure, and at least the issues that come out of this can be handled better.
So thank you so much, Sahil, Sriram, and Noopur for joining the conversation and sharing your wonderful thoughts on this sensitive topic. Thank you so much.